Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I'm not sure if you know much about what Laura, Huey, and I are doing, but we've started this thing called CrimCom, which is sort of similar to SciComm. We're hoping to be able to help criminologists get their research out from behind journal paywalls and into the hands of people that we think really need it, which
Yep.
are practitioners, policymakers. And I thought you would be the perfect person to talk to, not only because you've done research in so many areas of criminology and criminal justice, but also you've been talking a lot lately about public criminology. So I guess, you're one of the most, if not the most prolific criminologists in the world. Was there a point when you became dissatisfied with the ears that were hearing your research? You didn't feel that that your research was getting into the hands of people that needed it?
I think it was a little bit less of a dissatisfaction and more of I can do this, and in developing the confidence to and knowing what I'm talking about, and also knowing when I don't know what I'm talking about, so therefore I shouldn't talk about it. And what I saw was there were too many people who I thought were saying things that were not based on any kind of objective evidence. They're not even close to evidence. And so I got frustrated at seeing that. And it wasn't about well, I should do this, I got a platform now. I needed to develop the credibility research wise to be taken seriously. And I thought I first had to do that. And then I had to figure out, well, do I have something useful to say about a particular topic, whatever topic that was? And that's why I got into kind of moving into that direction. And I was a little bit worried that, and we're all a victim of this because research and articles and books and grants are the currency within which we operate, and that's how we're evaluated. Um, Fortunately, some universities are actually moving in a direction where it's not that you don't get credit for not doing it, but they say, oh, well, good for you, because universities need to be out there talking about the research of their faculty, and faculty need to be talking about the research, not just to each other. I recognize that not everybody wants to do that, and that's perfectly fine, and we don't want everybody to do that. But we want people who are knowledgeable to have an ability to speak on a platform on a particular kind of issue, especially now. Literally right now, when we're seeing social health, racial injustices and crises kind of like literally finding themselves in the same time and space. And what we do as criminologists matters in the world. I think we have a platform now to speak from. Now, I've always said that changing policy is not necessarily the goal. I think the goal is having our work at the table for discussion. If we can get to that and get to that repeatedly, then we can think about how we can incrementally change policy. Policy change, as you know very well from the work you've done, there's local level, there's state level, and there's federal level. It's much easier at the local level than it is at the federal level because we can't control the way the wind's blowing that day. But we can start small and then work our way going forward. And I think that the more of us that we are, what we're doing, the more the kinds of students that we can train and not necessarily reproduce ourselves in academia, but place them in agencies so that they do have a knowledge base of what to do.
I've spoken to many of your students, and I've worked with some of your former students, new and old, and from all accounts, you're an amazing mentor.
That's great.
Do we mentor our students enough in this area? Do we mentor?
No, we don't. We know when I went to grad school and I was trained by world-renowned criminologist, Ray Paternoster was my mentor, so I was very fortunate. And at the University of Maryland for my graduate program training, we were never taught any of this. And I'm not saying we should have been taught that, we just weren't. And so I see a real need for faculty to be helping students understand what this space is, because you can get good attention and then you can get really bad attention. And so I taught a class that I created when I was on faculty at the University of Florida a bunch of years ago called Professional Development. And that class was, what is it like to be a professor that you're not taught about in grad school? So it's the politics, it's all of the stuff that you never learn about in a journal article or a book or class by a big time professor, which is all important. But there's this other stuff that goes on in our lives all the time that we were never taught to do. And I think, not necessarily requiring a class on public scholarship or whatever, public, insert your favorite discipline, but I think having students understand what this is about and how you go about doing it and not doing it. And I think we have to be very careful about the lines between activism and public scholarship. Public scholarship is using objective, evidence-based research to talk about something. Activism isn't always that way. And I'm not saying it's one is better than the other. I think they're just very different things. You know, when we talk to the public, there are different publics who need different information in different ways for different purposes. And that's a real important point, because I can't talk to a senator the same way I talk to a pastor, the same way I talk to a mayor, the same way I talk to my dean. I can converse about the same material, but they're going to need it in different ways. And we can't speak in 30-page articles to the public. That's just not the way it works. And I always tell my students and my younger colleagues, I say, if it has a staple, no one's going to read it. And that's the way, because people's attention spans in DC don't operate that way. And so you got to be able to talk to people in 30 seconds and tell them what you did, what you found, and why it matters. So it's 10, 10, 10, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, because otherwise people are on to the next thread and the next thing on their list. And so that's not an easy thing to do. And I couldn't have done it at the beginning of my career. I only have been able to do it because of you practice it and you practice it, and you practice it. But you also have evidence to support your ability to do that.
Yeah, something that you're really good at, and I, not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm good at it as well. And a lot of our younger colleagues, I think, could use some guidance here, is networking.
Oh
and
my
I
gosh,
don't
yeah.
just mean networking within our field, which is important too, but networking outside of our field as well. What advice?
Yeah, you know, is that our field is not just criminology. It's also sociology. It's also psychology. It's also public health. And it's also our field outside of academia. You know, I give talks to Rotary clubs. I've given talks at happy hours at restaurants, because you're trying to just engage people to have conversations and to think about things in ways that they may have not thought about before. So when I think about our field, I'm thinking about the world, not necessarily criminology and criminal justice, because you don't know how far your work gets reached and read. And so I think it's important to be able to, and what's really important, I think, about what you're doing and you've done in your career, which I've long admired, is you have to find a way to talk to people at their level. And that's not talking down at them, it's talking about where they're at. And so talking to a public health scholar or talking to a pastor is slightly different, but similar in a way that you're trying to get your message in a way that's useful to them. So I think that's it, and that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, there's no article that explains that. It's trial and error, and also gaining the confidence to do that.
I read somewhere that you started as a journalism major.
Yeah, so I was a radio, television, film major, and actually in high school, I actually worked on my high school's newspaper, and so. This was back when when Tipper Gore was doing her explicit lyrics stuff, and so I was able to interview someone in the Parents Music Resource Center, the PMRC. This is the mid 1980s, right? So I'm real old, and so this is when there were records and cassettes and stuff, and so I loved writing. So I always thought about, how do I write to people, and so my first major was radio, television, film. I wanted to be a writer or a disc jockey, and then I took an intro to CJ class in my spring semester of my first year at University of Maryland, and it changed my life. Just one class just totally just redirected my life. And so I found that the power of mentoring and how, you know, serendipity, you have to allow for serendipity in life. And I tell this to students all the time. So you can't plan for 6 years. You can try and plan and have a large plan, but you got to allow your life to have these transitions and go wherever it goes. And you never know. And Scott Decker always told me is that you never know. And I always believe that. And so you never know. And it's also important to know you don't know what you don't know. And the more you read, as you know, and the more you do, the more you realize, I don't know anything. There's so much more to know. But yeah, I wanted to be in that area, and then my whole life changed. But I have found to use that area in my own work. So, and writing op-eds is a really good way to synthesize what you do. And it makes you realize, I just spent 30 pages on nothing, and now 650 words. But it really forces you to think about, You know, in a way, we're selling, not ourselves, but we're selling what we did. And we have to sell it to someone to care to get past the first paragraph of an op-ed. Or as you know, you have to grab someone with the title of your article or the grant proposal or whatever it is. You want them to turn the page. So how do we get to people to turn the page or get to the next paragraph?
Something else that you're really, really good at is making contacts with the local press. It seems to be no matter what city that you're in, you have just someone that you can call. If there's an incident that happens in your city or nationally, you have someone at the ready.
Yeah, so I started doing that a lot in Dallas. So I got to Dallas in 2001, and I got a random call one day from someone, and that then kind of led this to go like that. And I do a lot of things on record, then a lot of things on background. And you know, you'll spend a lot of time talking to reporters, and some of them just don't know, and they need background. So you're making an investment. You're investing in them, and they're investing in you. And so oftentimes I'll get calls from reporters in different cities, say, can you comment on this? I'm like, I can't, but I know who can. And so that's building that network, because you know, you're also trying to help your colleagues who might be better apt in a particular thing. Here in Miami, you know, I reached out to people in Dallas who know people here, and also make inroads here. But what I also did when I got here to Miami a few weeks ago is I met the public defender. I met the city of Miami police chief. I met the state's attorney. And the idea is that, you know, we need to be out there learning what the local people are doing at the practitioner level, and also to be a resource for them, because and it's not necessarily about doing their research. It's about, hey, we can be a sounding board, and as educators, and I believe this is true whether we're in public institutions, especially in public institutions, but also in private institutions. We need to help our community, and our community also involves the journalists in our community. And so yesterday I was able to get my first one here in the city of Miami on a real tragic case that hasn't received national attention. There's a Hispanic guy who was walking up and down the street with a machete, just a big machete in his hand. And cops tried to calm him down for about 2 minutes, whole conversation on tape. And then he gets tased, tase doesn't work, and then he gets shot by the cops. It hasn't gotten the national attention, probably could, because the way the makeup of the case is. But I had a journalist call me and say, can you give me some insight about whether or not this guy's brain injury could be used in the court proceeding? Of course it's possible. So I think, you know, it's important to reach out. And you know, this is a really important point that I think people need to hear about. Just because you and me and other people talk to reporters, it doesn't mean we're about the spotlight. And I think a lot of people who do press stuff are automatically, oh, well, they just want the limelight. No, that's not why. You don't know what the motivation is. The motivation is maybe we want to help. Maybe we want to be able to be about bringing the conversation to be based on evidence, to be based on data. That's where my motivation is, because there are a lot more things I turn down that I could easily agree to, and you can too. But we do it because we think that we have something relevant to say to the community.
No, absolutely. I'm so optimistic too. I think that our younger colleagues are getting better and better at this. I'm seeing more, you know, assistant professors writing op-eds in national outlets than ever before.
Yeah, I think it's great. And one of the things that I had a young woman who's a young faculty member at a not high research institution who does very good work on school shootings and school violence. She reached out to me. I won't say her name publicly, but she'll know who she is. And she said, I'm having trouble doing this. And so I read it for her, gave her some comments, you know, and tried to help her. And it finally got to some point of fruition. But that's the point of mentoring, is that we're always working with the next generation, but we want to help that generation get out there. And the more of us, and this isn't about, well, why is she in my space or he in my space? No, it's about all of us trying to inform the national debate or in local debate as much as we can. The more we can hammer this home, the better. And as you know, there'll be a lot of hitting your head against the wall saying, why are policies not being done on science? So we can't look at this as the losses. We have to look at this as short-term and long-term. And so there's going to be bumps on the road. There's going to be plenty of times when we're not going to be able to affect anything. But we just got to keep doing what we're doing. And because you never know when it might affect something. You never know when someone will read something, may not hit today, could hit, you know, 5 weeks from now or 5 years from now, someone could happen upon something. So we have to think about the long road or the long game in this business. But I'm really glad to see that the younger folks out there are doing what they're doing. I was late to social media. Nancy Levine at Urban Institute sat down with me and said, "You really need to get on Twitter." I'm like, "I don't know, you know," and now I'm on it and I've learned a lot. And I get more information from people who are doing the kind of work. You know, the stuff you're doing on Twitter is a huge inspiration to me. I look at it all the time. I think the CrimCom thing is really great. So what you're doing is, you know, think about, there's a great piece that John Law did for the Criminologist, which is, the Criminology Journal, when he was the president of ASC, it was 2004. He talked about the life course of criminology. And what he did is he found like turning points in what things that changed the field. I'm not saying that CrimCom's to change the field, but it really can be a catalyst for positive change in the sense that it gives people a space and a forum to do stuff. And then it goes outward. And as you know, you don't know who reads your stuff at different points of the day. And I talk about this all the time. It's like, well, when you post really matters. So if I post at 6 o'clock on the East Coast, not many people on the East Coast will see it, but a lot of people on the West Coast might. And then my colleagues in Australia, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. So this is why it's really important, you know, when you post things, to think about retweeting it at a different time and a different day, because you're going to catch different people at different times. It's not about being other people's faces. It's just about you're trying to maximize how you can get your message out there. And I think that the social media platforms are useful. We just got to make sure they're being used for constructive purposes and not destructive purposes. And that's one thing that I've seen in social media, is that people can be destructive. And, you know, I guess the way I was raised is, you know, when you're destructive about people, you're not being helpful. And I really strongly believe, and I hope that the viewers see and take that, the craft of what we do is a privilege to be able to do what we do, to teach, to mentor, to do research. It's an absolute privilege. And when you take it and abuse it, and you don't treat the community of scholars as we're all trying to do the best job we can with the limited and really bad data we have. We're trying to get better. And so I want to be optimistic and remind people that we're all really doing something here for the common good, and we're doing the best we can. And so let's be a little bit less negative in life. There's way too much negativity in this world, and let's kind of work together to bring about positive change and see the kinds of things that we all want. And I think what you're doing with this endeavor is a real important step in that direction. So I'm really thankful for the time that you've taken out of your career and of your life to do these kinds of things. It's a real honor and humbling privilege to be part of this.
Thank you, Alex. That's really sweet. It's actually, I'm having more fun with this than I've had in a long time. It's a great new challenge, and
It's
I
fun.
hope you use that. It is fun. It's really great.
It's great.
Well, thank you so much. Enjoy
My pleasure.
Miami.
Enjoy Long Beach.
Oh, I will.